that I had quit the Navy after a few years of sailing. The reason was I met with an accident and I was bedridden for almost 3.5, 4 years post that. Science says in a single day, one human being goes through or witnesses about 50 to 60,000 thoughts in a day. At least 85% of those thoughts are the same as what they were the day before. Whenever there is a feeling, when we feel something, there is a magnetic charge that's created. So when thoughts and feelings put together, constantly 24/7, 365, we are thinking and feeling. So that means there is a constant electromagnetic field that is being produced around us. And in spiritual circles, that is what is called as aura. And there are just different ways, and we have chakras in our body, and some are minor chakras, some are major chakras. You are just a mediator. You are just taking the energy from the cosmos, and as a mediator, you're passing on that energy to the client or the patient. Anytime when you walk into a room or you meet a certain person, you get a lot of positive energies or vibes, getting some good vibe from you, or certain people you don't get a good vibe. Hypnosis is basically, we all have a conscious mind. We have about over 90% is what we have called the subconscious mind.
Hi Rohit, welcome to Talking Through.
Hi Dipankar.
Thank you for coming to the show. We've always wanted to interview somebody who's a life coach and also a professional coach on leadership, because these two things are so closely related, right? So before we delve any further into the questions, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Firstly, thank you, Dipankar, for having me over. I'm pretty happy to share my thoughts, views with you and the viewers. I actually bring with me about 25 plus years of experience across different sectors and industries. Actually, I started my career way back in 1998 in the Merchant Navy. I was sailing for a few years with one of the largest companies of the world. Then I moved on after a few years, and I got into Genpact, which is back then it used to be GECIS, G International Capital Services. Then I got into the real estate sector, and I worked with a couple of large developers. I was working with one of the companies, one of the largest developers of Israel, by the name of Amregan, and we brought them into India way back in mid 2000s, and through the FDI, foreign direct investment. Now it's very common. Back then it wasn't so common. So we were strategic investing partners in a lot of projects in the NCR region. I moved on from there to Bharti, group, the Airtel group, the real estate arm of Airtel group, where I was heading the commercial sales for them. And then I, became a founder of a company where it was an HR tech startup company where we were automating the recruitment processes of mid and large organizations. Everybody talks about artificial intelligence now. So back then in 2015, it wasn't so common. We started developing a product then, and we launched it in the market in about 2017. And this is where, you do regular video interviews with a lot of artificial intelligence inbuilt, which means that, you're talking to a phone or you're talking in a camera on a laptop, and there is a detailed cognitive evaluation happening, and a detailed personality report would be generated within minutes. And that was being used for a lot of hiring for some of the largest companies who were using our tool. 2 years back, I moved into coaching and training, and I, founded a company called Empowering Souls, where I became an ICF certified PCC Pathway Coach. For people who are not familiar with ICF, it's the International Coaching Federation. It's one of the world's largest governing and accreditation body in coaching, which kind of defines very high standards of service for coaching. And here I am.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, you floated through a lot of things, from being a sailor, then in the corporates, then, technology, right?
Right.
But what I find interesting is your transformation from being somebody in the corporates and then moving outside as a corporate coach and an executive coach, right? How did that transformation really happen?
So there is a personal story attached to that, if I may share that with you. I mentioned earlier that I had quit the Navy after a few years of sailing. The reason was I met with an accident, and I was bedridden for almost 3.5, 4 years post that. And that was a very tough period in life. So while I did share whatever I did professionally, I also have a parallelly very strong spiritual side to me, where I've been practicing multiple modalities, spiritual modalities, meditating for almost 2 decades now. So because of that, I had inbuilt and already, kind of acquired a lot of quotient of empathy and compassion for people. So last couple of years, I was toying with this idea where I wanted to do something where there was more meaning to what I was doing. Not working for the sake of working, but doing something where from, that was more of an inner calling, where I wanted to help people, since I had seen a lot of lows post that also on multiple fronts, but I've always risen up and been very resilient. So I wanted to kind of give back in a way and help others to kind of realize their highest potential. And that was something which was very strong, feeling and voice from inside. So that's
Right.
how I really took
Okay.
to this.
Right. So, which is quite inspiring for everybody, and we'll delve into that a little
Sure.
deeper. So, I see a lot of people using a lot of different terms, but synonymously, like executive coaching and corporate coaching or leadership coaching. Can you tell us a little bit of the difference between these few things? Like, what is the difference between an executive coaching session, then a corporate coaching session, or just a leadership coaching session?
Sure, absolutely. You're right. There are different, terminologies that are being used, but
Yeah.
essentially, leadership coaching is pretty synonymous with executive coaching. But leadership coaching could also be for high potential employees. So, there are some mid to senior level employees who might not already be in the C-suite, but they are very high potential. The company sees them as people who could take on much larger roles in the coming times. So they want to kind of, get them prepared before they take the larger position or the, responsibility. So that probably would come under leadership coaching. And executive coaching essentially means, or usually typically refers to C-suite coaching, people who are functional heads, departmental heads, CEO, CFO, CTO, those kinds of coaching. But all of this comes under the ambit of corporate coaching.
So, when you do these coaching sessions with the different cohorts that you just mentioned, um, what are some of the common skills do you think people require to be a senior executive or a leader? And what do you think they already have?
So it's a good question. While why there are people who are emerging leaders and there are seasoned leaders who are already been leaders for quite some time. It's a given and it's a fair assumption to make that they're very good at certain technical and hard skills that they already have acquired over the years, and that's why they are at a position that they are. But what is even more critical at this stage is being very emotionally intelligent. And emotional intelligence is a very common term that is floating in the ecosystem today, and everybody talks about it. But there are four core pillars which are very, very critical when we talk about emotional intelligence. First one is being self aware. Are you really recognizing your own emotions and feelings? How aware are you of those? And how are you dealing with those? What actions do you take when you have certain feelings and emotions? How do you react or respond? Do you react or do you respond? That's one critical ability that a leader needs to have. The second one is, now you're aware, but how do you self regulate? So, are you being able to manage your emotions effectively in a manner which is appropriate and which demands the situation? So, that is self regulation. Third one that comes is empathy. Now, empathy is not towards yourself, but empathy towards people around you. These could be your colleagues, peers, your seniors. But if you're already senior, you have a lot of subordinates and team members. But it doesn't stop there. While you're empathetic to their pains and challenges and situations that they're dealing with, can you go beyond and offer support and comfort to those people? And if you can do that, that's a great thing. The last, which is also equally important, is social skills, which means, are you being able to effectively create authentic relationships, foster some bonding with people around you? Because a leader is only as good as his relationships with his peers or his team members. You could be somebody who's an outstanding person in his or her own skills, but if you don't have a good camaraderie and a bonding with people around, you're not going to be effective in the organization. So I think these are four critical things which are really important. But to add to, I won't talk about, there are many multiple, but I'll probably mention just two more. One is having a clear vision. Where does the organization, where do you really want to take the organization maybe 2 years, 3 years from now? And you need to kind of reverse engineer accordingly. And the other is being a good communicator. Now, you could be the best person, you have all the blueprint in your mind in terms of what needs to be done. You have a roadmap ahead, in your mind. But if you can't effectively communicate that to your team members and people who have to really support you in executing all of that, then the efficacy would definitely be diluted.
Right, right. We'll talk a little bit about communication skills more here, because sometimes people confuse using a certain language well as good communication skills.
Hmm.
What do you think are the components of a good communicator? Like, who is a good communicator? Can you elaborate
So
on
it's a
that?
very nice point, Dipankar, which
Yeah.
you mentioned, that it's a myth or a fallacy that people feel that if you're not a good orator,
Mhm.
you can't be a good communicator.
Mm.
Because while I agree that being able to speak well, of course, is an added advantage, no
Mhm.
doubt. It
Mhm.
gives you an edge over the others.
Mhm.
But it does not limit you still to be a good communicator, because communication is not restricted or limited only to speaking skills.
Mhm.
It is your body language. It
Mhm.
is, your, again, like I said, what kind of bonds do you share with people around?
Mhm.
Are you able to put your point across? Somebody could be very, very demure in his or her body language,
Mhm.
but still put across the point very well.
Mhm.
So there are multiple aspects to being a good communicator.
Mhm.
Surely, if you can articulately, convey the message that you want to, it's definitely a huge plus. But just because you might not have good speaking skills does not mean that you can't convey and communicate with your team or your people around in the ecosystem well.
Mhm. And also, you must have done coaching with a lot of different cohorts in a certain organization, right?
Hmm.
So there are people who are not team managers or managers now, but are on the cusp of making that change. Then you have experienced managers who are on the cusp of making functional leaders or something like that.
Right.
And then there are functional leaders who might be on the cusp of becoming country heads or CEOs, right?
Right.
So, overall, what is the main difference between somebody who has been a leader for a while and somebody who's on the cusp? So, can you explain that a little bit?
So you're right. There are actually differences and commonalities both.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start with the commonalities, if that's okay.
Right, right.
There are certain commonalities which are very similar in people
Mm-hmm.
who are not yet managers and going to become managers,
Mm-hmm.
people who've been managers for quite some time and wanting, ready to take up larger roles,
Mm-hmm.
and people who are also at a very senior position, already accomplished,
Mm-hmm.
with strong positions in the organization. And that is, all of them have this issue of, or fear of, not taking the wrong decisions. They have a fear, or they have a bit of discomfort in terms of how am I being looked at by the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something which is very common. Seasoned leaders, forget about people with mid level, or seasoned leaders, I'm saying, today are going through an imposter syndrome. And if you're familiar with the term, effectively refers to that: am I getting more than my due? Am I being able to do justice to the role that has been given to me?
Mm-hmm.
And this is very common amongst all three.
Mm-hmm.
But the differences are that when you talk about a seasoned leader, the nature of discussions changes. The discussion is more around strategic vision, strategic planning, in terms of where you see the organization few years from now and what needs to be done. It's a lot about stakeholder management outside and within the organization.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot to do with their own executive presence within the company. It is a lot to do with like I just said, planning followed by execution. And how do they really optimally utilize the resources that are available with them. So those kinds of discussions are more broader and more holistic, and they are more on a macro level. When we come to managers or people who are not as senior yet, it is more focused towards themselves, their own confidence levels, their own communication levels, their team delegation skills. Are they being able to delegate well or not? There are certain conflicts happening within teams. How do they really resolve and manage those conflicts in a better way? So while they're all important issues, but it is with regard to their team, them, and a small ecosystem within the organization. So that's the essential
That's
difference.
essential. And obviously, listening to you, I've also had like a 15 plus years of corporate career. Um, and I also made the change from, being somebody who's not managing anybody to somebody who is, and or to a manager or a leader, whatever you might say. Um, I think the main issue that I dealt with was while delegating,
Right.
that I could do this faster. I could do this better.
Yeah.
It's only when I got over that sense that I need to hand this over to somebody and that person will have a learning curve, which
Right.
is just fine, right? And I think
True.
that helped me get
True.
over that hurdle to
True.
becoming a team manager, because you also have to kind of absorb a lot of stress that comes with it.
True.
Both that comes from inside you and the stress that other people are going through, right? That, oh, this is the first time I'm doing this, how is it going to be? Because your mind is always focusing on the result that something might go wrong.
True, absolutely, absolutely, Dipankar. In
yeah.
fact, when as you're saying this, I couldn't agree more with you, because this is a real problem, and a lot of managers face this. So, to build on to the earlier question that you'd asked, that a lot of times when initially you don't have larger roles in the organizations, you're more of an individual contributor. So that time you're more focused only on skills which are managing yourself. For example, your own time management skills, your own resilience and adapting to certain situations around you or circumstances around you. It could also talk of the motivation. How motivated are you? Are you able to pick yourself up when something doesn't go your way? Are you able to pick yourself up from there or not? So those kinds of issues come in. But when you take up a larger role, the minute you become a manager or a team leader or any leader having a broader responsibility and people under you, then then the issues suddenly change from yourself to others, managing others. So managing self and then managing others. And there you essentially look at issues like team building, camaraderie within the team, collaboration within the team. It talks about like delegation you just mentioned, and of course preventing conflicts, but if they still do arise, then managing them well.
Right. And also I wanted to touch on a very sensitive topic in terms of managing other people or your team members. One is conflict resolution. And the other thing is having a difficult conversation with your team members when something is not going well or you want them to do better, right?
Sure.
So can you also shed some light on that?
Sure, absolutely. First, I'd like to take the latter part of your question, which is feedback, because this is a very important aspect and it's underrated. But a lot of people today are talking about the importance of constructive feedback. A lot of times when people aren't as senior, they fear feedback. But today there's something called a growth mindset. A lot of people who are progressing today have a growth mindset. I'm not getting into the details of the growth mindset, but in short, if I could still share, these are people, they're different natures, right? And there are certain sect of people who have this mindset who essentially want to grow. They believe in the power of continuous learning. They believe in seeing challenges as opportunities, and they don't get deterred. Of course, it's not easy for anybody, but they want to overcome those challenges and learn from those experiences. So those kinds of people are not at all scared. Rather, they welcome feedback. The other side, the other sect of people who probably are not so growth oriented, they usually fear feedbacks. But that's from the receiving end. But now the person as a leader, how do you really give feedbacks? There is an art to give a feedback, and it's called a constructive feedback. So whenever, for example, even in my career all these years, and a lot of executives that I deal with now as in sessions, what they usually do is they, of course, when they're talking to somebody, they appreciate the person for whatever good he or she has been doing in the organization. You make them feel valued, you make them feel good for what they're doing. And then we don't even say this is a negative. It's the right way of doing it is that these are areas of improvement that we could look at. And then what happens is the defense mechanism of the person at the receiving end, it just drops. So they suddenly become more receptive to whatever is being told to them. And that is something. Today, feedback is probably a very, very powerful tool to kind of improvise not just people, but entire processes within the organizations.
Right.
Now, that's the second part. The first part was conflicts, I think you talked about, right? So, see, it's a human nature. Wherever you have 5 people or more, or few people, few minds together, you have different cultures, mindsets, belief systems, so many different things at play. So conflicts are bound to arise. Undercurrents are bound to happen. It's you can't say that conflicts, if there is a conflict in an organization, it's not a good organization. It's a given, it's going to happen. But the question is that how do you see the early signs of conflicts arising, and how do you nip it in the bud? That is what is really important. But let's say and there are ways to do that. One of the ways is fostering a very a culture of open communication. You don't hold things to yourself, but in an appropriate manner you share. If you feel something is inappropriate, you have a dialogue one-on-one with the person. The other is, of course, having a lot of cross-functional, because today the diverse teams, everything is, there are teams from different countries, continents, working at different time zones, and all in different, all in same teams. So there are so many different cultures at play. So you have to respect the ethnicity of all of those people coming from different backgrounds as well. But if there is something bothering you, the best is to kind of just kind of address it in the early stages as well, so that it doesn't really become so big. The other one I was talking about, cross-functional meetups and gatherings. So that kind of improves the bonding amongst people.
Right.
Having said that, let's assume that the conflicts have already arisen, which they do. There is a very common and a very, very popular and a powerful tool called Thomas Kilmann model of conflict. Now, here there are 5 different styles that people usually have. A very simple thing is where you have, assertiveness, a quotient of assertiveness on one axis, and you have a quotient of cooperation on the other axis. So people who are usually very, very high on assertiveness and high on cooperation, they are people who believe in collaboration. The people who are very high on assertiveness, very, very low on collaboration, on cooperation, these are people who are competing all the time. And it's not, sometimes it's good, but a lot of times it's not really in the interest of the organization to always have a competing nature. So essentially, the 5 areas are competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. So the best space, the sweet spot, is collaboration, where you're collaborating together. It's a win-win for both. But the next best situation is compromising, where if there is a conflict on any issue, I say, okay, I agree to certain points of yours, you agree to certain points of mine.
Right.
But there are also leaders, senior leaders, a lot of times, not it's not all the time, but at times, where you get into the zone of avoiding situations because you fear the repercussions of confronting it at that moment. What that really happens is that tomorrow it catapults into something much bigger, which gets difficult to handle.
Right.
So it's always better to kind of address it and nip it in the bud.
Right. And obviously, this is a very sensitive topic. And thank you for shedding light on that, because a lot of people have asked me this.
Yeah.
And in many times, I've also had difficulty with this topic, right? The other thing that I wanted to discuss was about the pressure that people have while working. Recently, a few very sad incidents have happened where people have rather stayed in a job and absorbed exceptional pressure, which has taken a toll of them, rather than just leaving. Right? Or doing something else that they would like to do. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there is a better way to manage all this?
No, what you just shared, of course, it's very sad what just happened. And, that's the last thing that anybody would want. And my condolences to the families of, they lost their family member. And it's the worst thing that could have happened, to be honest. But today, I won't say it's something which is so rampant in a lot of organizations. Some of them, yes. But I think here a lot depends on the person himself or herself. They need to set their boundaries correctly. They need to know in terms of where to draw the line. Work is important. Work will always be important for them, for the organization. But if we can't really, kind of take a stand for ourselves, somewhere we are not doing justice to ourselves. And I think that's another area, which is the burnout that you're talking about. I do get a lot of clients who talk about their burnout, and then we work on creating a balance between the work life.
Right.
And I don't know what more to say, except for the fact that organizations are already aware. They are doing a lot about it, but maybe a lot more needs to be done.
Right. And since you've been in touch with so many people through your trainings, and I think you also do one-on-one trainings, right? Or
one-on-one coachings and trainings in groups.
Right? So can you share a story where you were able to help transform somebody from a sad or a difficult situation to a better one?
Sure. There have been multiple instances, but one of them to quote here, there was an IT company, and one of the senior folks who was handling almost cross-functionally and across different cities, he was handling almost a team of 40-50 people, about 3 different cities. And the essential main problem that he was facing was that while he was excellent at what he did, his teams, he was a project manager for a couple of very large projects for different companies, clients. And his team was always faltering on timelines. And every time there was a timeline, they won't be able to meet it and meet that deadline, and then he would be at the receiving end. So he was really not able to understand why this is happening. And then we kind of delved in the sessions deeper and deeper. And then we realized that there was no connect that he had emotionally or otherwise with his team members across different cities. There was a connect only, the conversation was only restricted and limited to the work and nothing beyond that, not even an inch beyond that. And then I just kind of, in the sessions itself, there were, a lot of reflection that he did. And he realized that maybe, I think, he only came up with it, because as a coach, we are not supposed to tell you what you do, but we just, we just kind of get into some very thought-provoking discussions where they get newer insights, themselves.
Right.
And he realized that, I think what is missing here is that I am not at all going beyond the work, and I'm not talking to them what is going on in their life, what are the challenges they're facing. And that one small difference he started implementing. And then he suddenly realized that there was a lot of angst that the entire teams were holding against this gentleman. Why? Because he was coming, while he was not arrogant, but he was coming across as somebody who was extremely arrogant, and they felt a strong disconnect with him, because of which the entire teams were not even passionate about what they were doing, and they were doing it just like any other chore. And since there was no passion, no commitment involved, the timelines were suffering. But and he was not able to even communicate the importance of the deadlines. And once he realized that, he started spending more time with them. He started doing some simple lunch, maybe have a outing together, do a lunch together, on different occasions. And that dramatically changed the whole thing. Suddenly he realized that he was the most sought after leader in the company. Everybody started respecting him a lot more. Whatever he would say, people would very willingly do that. And he realized this turnaround happened in about 3 to 3.5 months. It took time, because it's natural. But within these 3.5 months, from day 1 to day 90 or day 120, there was a dramatic shift. And he was extremely happy with how it changed the course of his leading style.
Right. And obviously, sometimes people kind of don't give enough importance to building a relationship within the team,
True.
right?
True.
And people are maybe also delivering a lot of good work, even without doing it, but probably it's not that sustainable over a very long period of time, right?
True.
So I guess the path that you suggested is very valuable, and I guess it's very important for all leaders to kind of that the team members know them well, right?
True.
That's very important.
Yes. And can I just add one more thing
sure.
here? There's also a quotient or an element of vulnerability. You traditionally, I'm talking about traditionally, for many years, showing your vulnerability has been considered to be a weakness.
Right.
But things have changed now. Today, for a leader to show his or her vulnerability is seen as a sign of strength. Because when people, hear some stories or know some facts about you, which make you also human like them, they suddenly bond with you better. It lends more credibility to you, and they're able to connect much faster. They can relate to you more, and that has a huge impact on their working.
Yeah. And also, along, as you mentioned, vulnerability, and thank you for bringing that up. What do you think about inclusivity from different angles? How do leaders ensure that there is inclusivity in the organization?
So yeah, it's a very more relevant today in the age that we are in, because of, as I mentioned, there are people working from different countries, different backgrounds, different cultures, different upbringings. So it is very, very important, extremely important. And, you'll be surprised to know that most of the large organizations, and even mid-level SMEs also, not as rampant or not as common in SMEs, but definitely in the large organizations, multinationals, there are long L&D interventions being done for DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion. And there are people are getting sensitized. So it is a core responsibility of a leader to sensitize their entire workforce to inclusion, the concept of inclusion.
Right. Because there is so much diversity now in the workforce.
Correct.
And that diversity does not mention only the gender of the person.
True.
Right.
True.
It's way beyond that.
True.
Culture and where they are from, what is their educational background, what are their preferences, right? So obviously it is very challenging for leaders to always keep that in mind and make a strategy which is also growth strategy, right?
True.
So it's a difficult thing to do.
True.
Now we've talked a lot about skills that are required as a leader or a manager. Let's talk a little bit about the softer skills that people need, right? Obviously, when you reach, as you said, when you reach a certain level in an organization, it is a given that you're good at your job and you know this, right?
Correct.
But in like 1 or 2 points, can you also point to what kind of softer skills people need to kind of go through that leadership journey that they have?
Some of it I have already kind of touched upon earlier, but softer skills essentially includes, overall your leadership qualities. What are those leadership qualities which I mentioned? Some of those. You also need to, be a good communicator, which we also talked about, because it's again one of the very critical aspects of soft skills. Time management skills, having a growth mindset, completely being accountable and responsible for whatever is being given to you.
Sure. And then, I mean, I wanted to move towards your other, and I know this is very close to your heart, is life coaching.
Yeah.
So, can you explain why did you decide to do life coaching along with executive coaching and trainings? And how are these two things converging together?
Sure. This is truly, you said it very rightly, it's very close to my heart. And the reason and how they actually kind of blend in together is because, see, at the core of anything, whether you talk about leadership coaching, executive coaching, or life coaching, at the core of it is a person. In coaching, we always say, coach the person, not the problem. Problems will keep coming and going, but it's the person. So you're talking about the belief systems that a person has, and that's something which is more to do with the inward mindset that a person has. Now, when we talk about life coaching, the reason I did the life coaching is because of my own personal evolution and journey that I have. I don't know if I mentioned earlier or not. I'm also a certified pranic healer, certified Reiki practitioner. I also am a master hypnotist. I have been, I have done multiple courses of Art of Living, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar ji. I used to, for many years, I was following a Buddhist practice called Bharat Soka Gakkai in India. Internationally, it's spread across over 100 countries. So there is a chant, Buddhist chant that you chant called Namyo Harenge Kyo. So I did that for many years. So essentially, I have been growing on a spiritual level as well. So at the end of the day, it might sound a little off track in terms of, since we're talking about professional stuff, but I don't know if you would believe or not, but we are all eventually souls, right? And we are, this body that we have is just for this lifetime, but soul is something which has been there for thousands of years, and it will remain for thousands of years. So life coaching, what I essentially cover there is people who are going through any kind of personal issues. It could be health related, it could be finance related, relationship related, their own self-worth related. It could be anything where they feel they're at crossroads. They don't know what to do. They're clouded completely. Their thought, the mind is clouded. They don't know what to do and which path to take, which direction to move in, what actions to take, what is actually right for them. They don't even know what they want. A lot of time today's youth and people in certain in different age groups, they don't even know what is it that they really want in life. Then there are people who are in mid 40s or 50s who a lot of times question their existence. So there I do life coaching for them in terms of helping them, guiding them to find their own answers in terms of what is it that they really want, how can they really achieve what they want to achieve. And there also, honestly speaking, while I do coaching in the format of ICF for some time, but towards the end of the session, I remove my coaching hat, tell them that I'm removing my coaching hat, and I do a bit of mentoring as well. I do share some spiritual practices with them as well. Meditation is is a part of that as well. I personally meditate a lot. I have been doing that for many years now, but I feel that it really ignites me. It gives me a sense of purpose. It gives me a sense of direction. It makes me feel more coherent. It gives me more power. So for me, it's like my fuel. Like we eat, we drink water, we eat food. For me, so it just comes naturally for me to want to share this with people so that they could also get benefit.
Right. And I'm not a very expert meditator, but I try to meditate a little bit. I'm not able to do it every day, but I do it when I can. But I feel it resets me a little bit.
Correct.
Right. It tells me to stop for a bit, think, and then move ahead again. So I think that's how it's helped me, and that's why I wanted to ask you this question.
Sure.
But you also mentioned about that you're a master hypnotist, Reiki, pranic healer. So can you just define these things a little bit, because it'll be good for the audience to know?
So at the crux of everything, whether it's Reiki, pranic healing, or hypnosis. Hypnosis is a little different. I'll touch upon that a little later. But essentially, very simple laws that we were taught in physics, in our earlier elementary school were three simple laws. First was everything in this universe is energy. Second is that the energy always remains constant. And the third is that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only transform from one form to the other. Keeping that as the basis, we realize that everything is energy. So, everybody says that, how you think really impacts how your life, what you manifest in life, right? Firstly, I will come back to energy, but I want to talk a little about the thoughts, and then it's all connected to Reiki and Pranic. So when we talk about thoughts, science says in a single day, one human being goes through or witnesses about 50 to 60,000 thoughts in a day. Now, when you have 50 to 60,000 thoughts in a day, almost 85% of those thoughts, at least 85% of those thoughts are the same as what they were the day before. Which means what? Which means that by the time you're 35, you're actually running on an autopilot. So we think we are taking decisions in our life consciously, but effectively our subconscious is doing that because we are already reset ourselves and we are on an auto program. So what really happens is that when we talk about these, so every time there is a thought, and why it helps us or why it directly impacts the reality that we manifest is, so every time we have a thought, the brain creates a chemical. And it creates a chemical to make us feel the way we are thinking. So for example, I'm thinking of something which is unpleasant, which makes me feel sad. It's a sad thought. Brain will create a chemical so that I start feeling sad. Now, if I think of an event which is happy, brain will create a chemical that will make me feel happy. It could be oxytocin or dopamine and whatever that is. Now, having said that, whenever there is a thought, there is an electrical charge that is created. Whenever there is a feeling, when we feel something, there is a magnetic charge that's created. So when thoughts and feelings put together, constantly 24/7, 365, we are thinking and feeling, good, bad, ugly, whatever. But we are not stopping. We are thinking, feeling. So that means there is a constant electromagnetic field that is being produced around us. And in spiritual circles, that is what is called as aura. And that is the energy circle or the energy body around us. Now coming back to Reiki and Pranic. We recognize that everything is energy. We recognize that we have an energy field called an aura around our body. And there are just different ways. And we have chakras in our body. And some are minor chakras, some are major chakras. In English, these major chakras are called energy centers. So these energy centers correspond to all your functioning of your different body parts. So we have 7, as per Reiki and Pranic, we have 7 major chakras. And some people even say 11 major chakras. But essentially these 7 chakras, they correspond to different cells, tissues, atoms, nerves, muscles in our body. Now what you do is, as a healer, you are just a mediator. You are just taking the energy from the cosmos, and as a mediator, you're passing on that energy to the client or the patient. And that's Reiki. Reiki is usually mostly by touch. Pranic is a different therapy. It's without touch, isn't really required. But essentially, the objective is the same.
Okay. And since you mentioned about aura, and I've heard this word a lot. So what creates aura, whether negative or positive? And if somebody comes to you with a negative aura, which is making them suffer, how do you help that person?
So, firstly, what creates the aura? Every thought, like I said, is either diminishing your energy field, which is the aura, or expanding it. So, what usually expands the aura? Feelings and thoughts of joy, love, gratitude, giving, kindness. Instantly, you are elevated. You just say 3 times. You say, "I am powerful. I am excellent. I am amazing." Just you say it and you will see an instant vibrational shift in your body. Now, when you do that, you are expanding your energy field. You say words like, life is useless. I don't deserve this, or XYZ, anything which is negative. Suddenly you feel the field is shrinking. So we are not talking about 1 day or 1 minute. We are talking about months and months and years of how we are thinking, feeling and acting.
Right.
And that is what defines our aura, or, defines the size of the aura. So just to add a little to it, athletes, people who are sports person, they have a fairly expanded aura because they're constantly, they're very, very committed, very focused, hardworking, sincere, dedicated, and they're not entertaining any negative thoughts. They have a purpose, they're working towards that purpose and that goal. So they have a very expanded, robust aura. People who are very spiritually evolved, for example, saints and gurus, they have a very expanded, aura. People like us who are usual average men, of course, we have days which are very bad, days which are not so good. but what defines is how we really think and how we respond to situations.
Right. And tell me something about your own spiritual journey. Like, how has it been like, and how does it affect your profession, like coaching people or training people? How do you feel that happens?
So, like I said, of course, it's been over a 2 decade journey for me doing multiple practices. But I did not mention one thing. The last 4-5 years, I have been following this gentleman called Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's probably one of the best and most sought after people in the world today. He's one of the highly acclaimed neuroscientists, and he's even bigger than Tony Robbins, if you're familiar with Tony Robbins today. So I have read he's written a couple of books called, Becoming Supernatural, You Are the Placebo, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. So when I came across and I read his first book, You Are the Placebo, it resonated so much with me. Every word that was written, I felt it was speaking to me. And I felt all the spiritual practices that I've done, because I'm a very highly analytical person. I'm a very logical person. So I whatever I was reading, scientifically he explained, so he mystifies the mystical. So all the spiritual practices that I learned and acquired so many learnings and information, it kind of got crystallized with his teachings. And since then I've been practicing doing his work. Coming back to how it helps me as a coach or a trainer, I think naturally it's a natural extension of who you are from within, which kind of permeates around you. Now, if I'm coaching a person but I'm very negative from within, how will the energy will transfer to him or her? How is he or she going to benefit?
Right.
If I'm conducting a training in a room, and you must have noticed, anytime when you walk into a room or you meet a certain person, you get a lot of positive energies or vibes.
Right.
We call it vibes.
Vibes, yeah.
Hey, I'm getting some good vibe from you, or certain people you don't get a good vibe.
Right.
So essentially, it's all about what you are inside is what is kind of spreading around you. So I think, of course, has a very, very direct impact. And also, just to add to this, while coaching and training is what I do now, I have all the plans to become a motivational speaker, and I also have started working on that a little bit, because again, that comes from within. I have gone through a lot of struggles I haven't mentioned here because it's not an appropriate forum, but because of that, I strongly feel that if you really, really want something, you can get it.
Right. Obviously, we've talked about a lot of things, but there is one thing that we should come back to is hypnotism.
Yeah,
right?
hypnosis.
So can you?
So hypnosis is basically, we all have a conscious mind. We have about over 90% is what we have called the subconscious mind. And we are pretty much operating. We have our conscious mind, which is our rational decision-making, faculties that we have. There is fire. We know we don't even want to touch that, or whatever decisions we take in day-to-day life. Those are being done by the 3 or 4% of the conscious mind that is available. Einstein, who was such a brilliant person mind, he was probably using point few percent more than the average mind. We are still not even using the entire faculties that are available to us. That's an untapped potential. But 90% is something which stores information from our past experiences, could be from this lifetime, from the time we were born to now. But a lot of it is also coming from your previous lives, which is where your past life regression also comes in. So basically, hypnosis is a technique where you basically just douse the conscious mind, you directly go into the subconscious mind, and then you bring about certain changes. You install those circuits and operating system right at the operating system level, certain changes that you want, and then you come out. And automatically, so I'll give you an example. A lot of people who are smokers, they want to quit smoking, but somehow they're not able to do that. Hypnosis has always been known to be so effective in cases like these, because what happens is, consciously, if you tell yourself, I don't want to smoke, you'll find umpteen reasons why you want to smoke. Hey, this is good for me. Who cares about it? It's not bad for health. It's okay. I feel like doing it. Oh, I'll start from tomorrow. But when you go to in a hypnotic state, when you go to the subconscious and you say that there is no urge for smoking, it is just not needed. Consciously you'll be surprised when you come out of the hypnosis, you just don't feel like smoking. You're like, I don't know, something is strange. I just don't feel like smoking. Because what is governing is not a rational mind. All the governing is the belief systems that we've acquired from the time we were born till now. Like I just said earlier, that we are on autopilot and we're not even aware of it.
Right.
So if you want to bring about any dramatic shift and change in your life, you need to tap your subconscious.
Right. And I'm just asking this out of just curiosity, but is hypnosis just like what we've seen in the movies, or it is different, right?
No, so that is different. That's
Yeah.
another aspect of it. That's
Yeah.
stage hypnosis.
Yeah.
While the concept still remains the same, but
Mm.
it is different. And clinical hypnosis is very different, actually.
Mhm.
You know, normal belief or perception that people have is that when you're hypnotized, you don't know what's happening.
Mm.
Whereas in clinical hypnosis, it's just the other way around.
Mm.
Your, mental faculties are high. They're in a hyper state, hyper awakened state.
Mhm.
So not only are you normally aware, you're hyper aware of
Right.
what's happening.
You know, can you share with us your own learnings through life coaching, and you've met so many people through your profession? What are your life learnings, and what advice would you give people who are going through like a rough patch in their life?
First thing that I would say is that believe in yourself.
Yeah.
It all starts from there. The whole world could tell you that you can't do it, or your family. And most important, it's not about the world. What really matters to you is what your immediate people in your vicinity tell you.
Hmm.
People who are in your family or near and dear ones, friends that you hang out with, it's not that they mean bad for you.
Hmm.
They could be coming up from their own preconceived notions or limitations, and they might be telling you in good faith that you can't do this, or this is not right for you.
Hmm.
They don't mean bad, but you don't need to use that as a benchmark for setting up your own expectations or your own goals.
Hmm.
And if you can believe in yourself, just belief is not enough. You need to act on it as well.
Right.
So, whatever goal you might set up, if you're not consistently working towards it, you're not going to get that.
Right.
What I have realized, and I just quickly, share that I still am. I had mentioned about an accident long back, and I still have been dealing with some health issues which kind of limit my movement.
Hmm.
So every day to get out of bed is a struggle for me because I'm in pain.
Hmm.
But does that deter me or stop me from what I need to do? No.
Hmm.
I am still kind of every day conquering myself. So it's like, when you talk about, in the Shara, you say the Ravan is within you. So that within you, Ravan is what you really need to conquer and tame.
Hmm.
And if you can do that, there's a simple analogy that talks about, a child asks his father that, the father says that, asks his child that there is a white wolf and there is a black wolf. So the child asks, Papa, which, if they fight, which wolf will win? The father says, whichever one you keep feeding. So what that really means is, whatever, there are going to be positive thoughts in our mind. I can't do this. I'm not good enough. Blah blah blah. So and so forth. And there'll be good thoughts that no, I can do it, and I will do this, and I will do that, and I'll be consistent. Whatever you keep feeding yourself is what is going to manifest.
Right. Right. Um, and also tell us something about your own passions out of work. Other than work, what do you like to?
I enjoy listening to old music. When I say old, I mean 70s, 80s, 90s. Those times. I think the music, it just kind of soothes my nerves. I enjoy watching some nice movies. And I, of course, like I mentioned, meditation is more of a routine now. So sometimes when I really connect well, I go deep in the meditation. It gives me a feeling of bliss, being in bliss. That's something. I enjoy traveling, and I enjoy talking to interesting people. So I think these are all things that I really enjoy.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for sharing your journey with us. I think it started from professional coaching and went towards spirituality and other related things, which seldom happens on our podcast. So thank you very much for that. And I hope we'll talk to you again at some point and go even deeper in certain things, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you so
yeah.
much, Dipankar, for having me
Yeah.
over.
Thank
It
you
was a
so much.
pleasure.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. You just heard Rohit Bahl and his journey, and I hope you've learned a lot from that. If you have any questions from him, please drop us in the comments and we'll make sure he responds to you. Till then, see you.